Bonjour. My name is Carlos Godoy, and I will host this press conference of the Coalition of Hardest Hit Businesses this morning in both English and French. At the end of the presentation, I will take questions from reporters through the Q&A function or through raising their hands. Je m'appelle Carlos Godoy et j'animerai cette conférence de presse de la Coalition des entreprises les plus touchées ce matin, en français et en anglais. À la fin de la conférence de presse, je prendrai les questions des journalistes à travers la fonction Q&A ou en levant votre main. I am joined today by representatives of the Coalition of Hardest Hit Businesses, the President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, Beth Potter, the Executive Director of Festivals and Major Events Canada, Martin Roy, and the President and CEO of the Hotel Association of Canada, Susie Grinnell. Se joignent à moi ce matin des représentants de la Coalition des entreprises les plus touchées. La présidente directrice générale de l'Association de l'industrie touristique du Canada, Beth Potter, le directeur général des festivals et événements majeurs Canada, Martin Roy, et la présidente et chef de la direction de l'Association des hôtels du Canada, Susie Grinnell. I would now like to invite the President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, Beth Potter, to say a few words. Madame Potter.
Thank you, Carlos, and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I am Beth Potter, President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. We are here today representing the Coalition of Hardest Hit Businesses, an industry group representing a variety of stakeholders, including tourism, travel, arts and culture, events and festivals, accommodation, and hospitality. We are here asking the government to support Canada's hardest hit businesses and the jobs they support. If we do not continue to receive tailored support, 60% of Canada's hardest hit businesses face bankruptcy by the end of the year. Prior to COVID-19, tourism was one of the fastest growing industries in the world. We are a year into the pandemic and the visitor economy is still in crisis. Our industry has lost over 500,000 jobs. Tourism-related businesses were the first hit by the pandemic, the hardest hit by closures, and we will take the longest to recover. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the tourism-related businesses that make up the coalition employed more than 1.8 million Canadians, about 1 in every 11 jobs. Our membership is primarily Canadian-owned small or medium-sized businesses providing significant employment while living in the local community. Our employees are predominantly women, young people, Indigenous, and new Canadians. Government support programs have allowed many of our businesses to survive until this point. We have lost revenue and cash flow, but fixed expenses continue. With uncertainty in reopening guidelines looming as we move toward a potential second missed summer season, and without liquidity and confidence in support programs, businesses will not be able to survive and reopen. It is critical that the investments made to save tourism-related businesses be continued through the time when our members will need it most. I would now like to turn it over to Martin Roy, our Francophone representative.
Thank you, Beth. Il y a 6 mois, nous étions ensemble au Château Laurier pour lancer la coalition des entreprises durement touchées et nous avons été entendus par le gouvernement canadien. Nous avons été heureux de voir notre réalité reconnue dans le discours du trône et dans l'énoncé économique d'automne. Le taux de la subvention salariale a été augmenté par la suite. Pour tout ceci, nous sommes très reconnaissants envers le gouvernement de M. Trudeau. Aujourd'hui, notre coalition fait officiellement appel au gouvernement fédéral pour qu'il prolonge les programmes de soutien essentiels aux secteurs les plus durement touchés. Plus précisément, nous demandons à la ministre des Finances de profiter du budget pour prolonger et améliorer la subvention salariale d'urgence du Canada, ainsi que la subvention canadienne d'urgence pour le loyer, au-delà de la date limite du 5 juin, soit jusqu'à la fin de l'année 2021. Le programme de subvention salariale est une bouée de sauvetage essentielle pour nos industries et nos employés. Cela permet à bon nombre de nos entreprises fortement touchées d'employer des personnes à l'heure actuelle et de conserver leur expertise dans la perspective d'une relance réussie. La subvention au loyer fournit également un soutien essentiel pour aider à couvrir les coûts fixes. Ce programme a soutenu bon nombre de nos petits exploitants qui ne seraient pas opérationnels aujourd'hui sans lui. In the absence of any certainty, many festival and event organizers are nearing the point where they must decide whether to cancel their planned activities for this year or to go ahead with a smaller scale edition. Chances are a lot of them are going to once again miss out on the opportunity to generate their revenues for the year. Other sectors of the economy may begin to recover as restrictions ease, but the event sector will not be in a position to do so and will require continued government support until a return to normal occurs. On comprend que ces programmes coûtent cher aux contribuables. Cela dit, nous mettons en garde les élus qui voudraient y mettre fin trop tôt ou opter pour une aide dégressive. S'il faut faire des choix, nous croyons qu'il faut plutôt continuer de soutenir moins d'entreprises en ne gardant éligibles que celles qui continuent d'être les plus affectées dans les secteurs du tourisme et de la culture, par exemple, où les pertes de revenus vont parfois jusqu'à 100%. On nous dit chaque jour que la pandémie n'est pas terminée, on nous dit de ne pas lâcher avant d'arriver au fil d'arrivée. On demande encore d'énormes sacrifices à nos entreprises. Nous, on dit au gouvernement, OK, mais lâchez-nous pas, vous non plus, avant qu'on arrive au bout de tout ça. C'est un pacte, c'est un deal qui doit aller dans les deux sens. Ce serait ridicule de perdre des festivals, des industries culturelles, des institutions culturelles et touristiques en général parce qu'on n'a pas voulu payer 6 mois de plus de subventions salariales alors qu'on en aura payé pendant plus d'1 an. On aura besoin de ces entreprises plus que jamais après la pandémie pour relancer l'économie, le tourisme et nous fournir de la guérison sociale, nous permettre de nous retrouver tous ensemble, enfin, et de faire la fête comme avant la pandémie. Je voudrais maintenant céder la parole à Susie Grano.
Thank you, Martin. Canada's hotels and other hard-hit sectors are just like every other Canadian. We want to get back to business and normal as soon as humanly possible. But for our sectors, the end of this pandemic will not happen quickly in the flip of a switch. Let's look at our fall convention and meeting season. Those events have all been canceled due to mass gathering restrictions. Business travel won't come back with a roar as Zoom has changed our lives, and many companies will continue to restrict travel as a company policy. The challenges we expect to encounter until the end of 2021 are not the result of individual business decisions. They are the direct result of the final stages of the pandemic. We have every confidence that once COVID is completely behind us, Canadian tourism will rebound, conventions and live theater will be packed, road warriors will get back out there to close deals face to face. But that recovery will be further down the line for us. In the meantime, the wage and rent subsidy programs will be a lifeline. Their continuation would make the difference between a vibrant tourism and cultural industry in Canada and a generation-long loss of events, storytelling, and tourism experiences that make our country so special. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney wrote in his new book, support for companies should be targeted at regenerating the most affected industries rather than provided as an expensive blanket support for all. We agree with this assessment. As other sectors bounce back quickly after June 2021, it is both prudent and practical for the government to tailor its existing support programs to sustaining those industries most affected by the pandemic. We heard a strong commitment to support the hardest hit in September's speech from the throne and the November fall economic statement. In April's budget, we need to hear a clear commitment from the government that they will stand behind Canada's hardest hit sectors. Specifically, we are hopeful to see the Minister of Finance announce an extension and enhancement of the CEWS at 75% targeting the hardest hit industries until the end of 2021, and an extension and enhancement of the CERS program for hardest hit businesses, including deeper support for medium-sized businesses. That commitment in the budget would give the coalition's more than 200,000 businesses the confidence and certainty to soldier on, bet on themselves, and get back to employing more than 2 million Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, Martin, and Susie. I will now take questions from reporters. Je prendrai maintenant des questions des journalistes. Cormac McSweeney, à vous la parole. Please ask your question.
Yes, for whoever wants to answer this, I'm just wondering, have you done an analysis on how much this extension would cost Canadian taxpayers versus how much it would cost the economy if these supports do not remain in place past June?
I can take a cut at that. The government has a number of ways that they can extend this program. The legislation ends in June, and so the cost will depend on how they structure the ongoing support. Will it be on a sliding scale? What is going to be the definition of hardest hit? Is it going to be 40% revenue loss, 50% revenue loss? Until we know the details of how this program would be structured in the second phase of COVID, we can't do a calculation like that. But I can say that the cost of doing nothing would be far greater than the cost of supporting these businesses and keeping them intact until they can get to the other side.
And what is that cost? Have you done an analysis as to dollar figures in terms of GDP, in terms of the economy in general, of how this could impact the country should we see I think you said about 60% of businesses in the hardest hit sectors facing bankruptcy? And also, just to throw in here as well, have any of your industries or any of you spoken with the finance minister or anyone within the government in regards to these ideas?
We've been in ongoing conversations with government about the potential loss that we could see in this sector. And they have certainly been listening to us. We've seen that in the fall economic statement. We saw that in the speech from the throne, and we're certainly hoping to see that in this federal budget as well. And speaking to the cost specifically, the cost, if we start to see a breakdown of the critical infrastructure in the travel and tourism industry, it means that in a post-COVID world, Canada can't function the way it used to. It means that people can't move around and do business. It means that for rural and remote communities where there's only, using hotels as an example, there's only the 2 or 3 hotels in that region. If they go under, you can't get essential services to the region. People can't move around. For tourism regions in the country whose livelihood relies on tourism as the source of their lifeblood, people aren't going to be able to go there if hotels, as an example, go to businesses, and if all of the tourism businesses there, or certainly a sizable portion of them, go under. And so this could be a disaster for Canadians in the post-COVID world, and we just cannot stand by and allow critical infrastructure to break down.
Cormac, you're looking for a number, and let me just share this one with you. In 2021, if things continue as they are, we expect, and these businesses get the support that they need, we still expect that receipts earned through our suite of sectors will be down over 35% from 2019 numbers. So we were a $105 billion industry. That would take us down to about a $68 billion industry. So the cost of supporting these businesses is incredibly important to ensure that we can still have those businesses and bring them back to full capacity in the future.
Prochaine question. Next question. Please raise your hand. S'il vous plaît, levez votre main sur l'application Zoom, s'il vous plaît. Prochaine question. Next question. Cormac McSweeney, do you have another question?
I do have another question. Just wondering about the reopening of the border. If we get a decision on reopening, let's say the US border, and restrictions still remain on international travel, but if the US border reopens to travel and tourism, given the vaccination rates that we're expecting over the spring for the American population and the potential that Canadians could be mostly protected by June, if we're able to reopen the US border before the end of June, by the start of summer, would that offset a lot of the needs that you would have for these supports? Or do you think that even if the border reopens this summer, you would still need these supports in place?
I will take that. I will suggest that we would still need the supports in place, maybe at a different capacity, but not every business is going to benefit from being able to welcome Americans back. And a lot of businesses are going to need ramp up time in order to be ready. And so if we are looking at opening the border, we would look to have some lead time in order to do that. Businesses are going to have to, re-inventory, rehire, retrain staff. As we said earlier, we've lost 500,000 staff employees over the last year. And just think about getting attractions and other operations up and functioning again. They're, everything from recertification to mechanical and other operations that will need to be attended to before we can welcome guests back into our businesses. So opening the border by July 1st would be fantastic, as long as we've got the lead time, and certainly would help many of our businesses.
Maybe I'll just build on that. The border is one component of where people come from, but I think the reason we're in the business of bringing people together, and that whether that's a convention or a fair or a wedding, these events are certainly not happening this summer, whether the border opens or not, because travel, especially long haul travel, takes lead time and it takes planning. And we're getting really, really close to the summer, and I suspect most people have already made a lot of their summer plans. And if they haven't, we're hoping that the opening of the border, or even breaking down domestic barriers within our own country, needs to happen. And I think important is that people are given the permission structure to travel, which may also not be there, depending on the performance of the variant and the virus and vaccinations. One thing is certain, and that is that everything is uncertain. And so what we're asking for the government to do is to put a support program in place that has a sliding scale. So if we end up with borders open, or we end up with people able to move around within our country, some of our resort and rural hotels may do very well. They would not get the support, but our downtown cores are very likely to sit empty for the duration of this entire summer, well into the fall, and probably well into the spring, because what drives people to the core are the events. And those events are not going to be able to take place regardless of whether we have a border open or not.
Those are all the questions I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Cormac. Please raise your hand for the next question. Prière de lever votre main pour la prochaine question. Merci. Ceci conclut donc notre conférence de presse. Thank you. This now concludes our press conference.